let's talk about the Tremors TV series. That's right, after the third movie, the Sci-Fi Channel ordered 13 hour-long episodes for a Tremors TV show. Now, TV moves a lot differently than film. Things need to be done quick and cheap, so don't expect the best acting and effects. However, I will say after watching all 13 episodes, I was entertained. Knowing that the entire show couldn't only be about graboids, it's interesting what they managed to come up with. We have a giant bacteria monster, acid-spitting plants, and even aliens our heroes have to fight with. So let's go through each episode and pick out some highlights from each one. Then you can decide if you want to spend over 9 hours watching it. Episode 1, Feeding Frenzy, introduces us to a new citizen that's living in perfection, Tyler Reed. Tyler bought Desert Jack's graboid tour from Jack, and now he's moving into town. So that explains why Sean Christian isn't here, but it doesn't explain what happened with Jack and Jody. I thought they hooked up at the end of the third movie, but whatever, fine. I actually think I like Tyler just a little bit more anyways. He's likable and not just trying to get tourists money, but to actually show them around and give them a chance to see El Blanco for themselves. Yeah, El Blanco's still alive, and because he's protected, Melvin can't go on with his plans to build a strip mall called Melville.
You would actually rename the town you grew up in after yourself?
Why not?
So they're still playing with that plot point from the third movie. The locals have all gotten used to El Blanco, and he's now treated as more of a nuisance when he comes by knocking things off shelves. The guy in charge of protecting the endangered worm is W.D. Twitchell, aka Hank Schrader from Breaking Bad. The dude basically plays the same character. I kept waiting for him to walk with a limp and start talking about his minerals.
They're rocks, Hank.
No, they're minerals. Jesus, Marie, I got some geodes coming that are very delicate, all right?
Twitchell, or Twitch for short, is the Fed in charge of all these people's lives. If something happens to El Blanco he doesn't like, he has the authority to kick him out of town and let the worm roam free. So, naturally, Bert hates Twitchell. Another new character is Miguel's niece, an ex-Vegas showgirl that's taken over her late uncle's ranch. But she doesn't really look like a farmer, does she? I mean, I'm not complaining, but I think they knew what they were doing when they casted her. So anyway, the first episode sets all that up and has a quick little plot about some device planted by Melvin to make El Diablo hungry. The idea being that the graboid would be too dangerous and Bert would have to kill it, thus making the desert safe again, and Melvin could build. But Bert figures this all out. He stops Melvin and saves the graboid. Ironic that he now has to protect them just so that he can stay in perfection. Episode 2 is Shriek and Destroy. Twitchell contacts Bert and Tyler to take out a shrieker problem in another town. Once they get there, they discover the town is celebrating its annual Pioneer Days festival, and the townspeople seem to be more worried about the local softball game than Shriekers. Using Bert's GPS system, they can tell that there's 2 groups of the monsters. Bert and Tyler take out most of them, but they do meet up with Bill McLean from Fish and Wildlife Service, who's here to get in on the action. He informs the guys that he took out the other group, and even kept one of them alive to study. Where is he keeping it? Why, at the local feed and grain store, which we all know Shriekers just love to eat and multiply. So now we have a problem on our hands. The monster has already escaped, and there's a bunch more of them.
They're headed for town.
Bert and Tyler take some out, but there's just too many, and they're all headed towards town. It's time the guys split up. Tyler heads to the carnival to try to warn everybody, and Bert heads to a house of a guy he's heard has quite the gun collection. The Shriekers attack, and it's chaos for a bit, but eventually Tyler manages to get their attention using a cooked pig and brings them to Bert. who's already breaking into the house with all the guns. He's super excited to see this collection that might rival his own, but once inside, he's pretty disappointed. They're all old single musket loaders. There's too many Shriekers and not enough time to load each gun. All hope seems lost until the town's softball team shows up to lend a hand. They all take a gun and line up in a formation. When the Shriekers are getting close to them, they open fire, managing to take them out before the monsters get too close. With Burt taking out the final Shrieker. Back in Perfection, the guys tell their story, and Tyler shows them some footage he was able to get. But it's mostly just Miss Pioneer. Episode 3 is Blast from the Past, which is clever because it's about the ass blaster Nancy and Mindy caught in Tremors 3. Yeah, remember that? The one they sold to Siegfried and Roy?
It's the one I sold to Sigmund and Ray.
Well, here they changed the name to Sigmund and Ray, which is silly, but I'm guessing they couldn't afford the rights to the name. It opens up with Burt giving lessons on how to become a survivalist. You see, at this point in the story, Burt's broke. At first I thought, there's no way he would need money after Tremors 2. He would have made around $350,000 from the Mexican government killing graboids. Plus, he's always doing odd jobs for Twitchell, so I figured he was set. But remember, in Tremors 3, his house blew up, and because he doesn't believe in banks, his silver bars were all destroyed. He probably only had enough money to rebuild his house, which is now underground, and replenish a little bit of his gun stash. Yeah, I get it. He's broke, and he needs to teach these poor schmucks how to survive out here. According to the series creator, S.S. Wilson, he charges around $800 a person too, so he's making out pretty well. Bodies start showing up around town, and at first, no one knows what's killing them. But then, two guys show up out of the blue, Meade and Rosser, who explained that the captured ass blaster, they've nicknamed Smit, which is what I'm gonna call it from now on, just so I don't have to say ass blaster every 5 minutes. Mr. Smit escaped, and they're here to capture it alive. Burt would rather just shoot it and be done with it, but unfortunately that's not an option. So the guys work together to try to bring the monster down, while Nancy and Jody keep Burt's class going. As you would expect, things don't go as planned. Remember what happens when an ass blaster eats? It passes out, and they could easily nab it. But this one's gotten used to the fancy meals prepared for him every day by a French cook. So Nancy and the guys from Burt's school get cooking and prepare all of the finest dishes. They lift the food up in the air and sort of fish Mr. Smit out of the sky and trap him. That's about it for this episode, but I do want to point out that the first time you see Mr. Smit, he kind of looks like a kite, and now I want an ass blaster kite. Episode 4, Hit and Run, introduces us to a couple new characters, mobsters from Vegas, who are working on a deal that'll get them $20 million. All they need to do is to go to some locker, get some bonds or something like that, and then they're set for life. Problem is, they need to wait a while and lay low before they can get the dough. So Frankie and Max decide to check out Perfection. Frank doesn't believe that El Blanco is real, and he thinks it's all just a con. So Max takes him to Tyler for the Graboid tour to prove him wrong. Unfortunately, the Graboid is a no-show, so the guys decide to take matters into their own hands and go for a little hike to find him. And, well, they do. El Blanco bursts from the ground, grabs Max, and pulls him under. That's not good. Not only is Max dead, but he was the one wearing the key to the locker with $20 million in it. So they screwed up bad. Frankie comes back into town, he tells everyone what happened, and he calls his boss Kenny for some help. Kenny shows up, and it's Michael Roker. Yeah, Of course, this was before he was in The Walking Dead or Guardians of the Galaxy, so at the time he wasn't the star we know him today. But still, it's pretty cool to see him here. Anyway, Kenny's come prepared. He studied up on how to bring down whales. And really, that's all a graboid is, a land whale. Of course, killing El Blanco is bad for the citizens of Perfection, so they work on stopping the mobsters. A firefight breaks out between the two groups, but in the end, El Blanco ends up getting a hold of the harpoon and takes out Kenny. I think I'd rather get eaten. Oh, well, there you go. El Blanco runs away, taking Frankie with him, and everyone assumes El Blanco got him. But I wouldn't be so sure.
Footprints.
Project 412 is an interesting episode, and it's all because of a reoccurring guest character. Are you ready for this? It's Christopher Lloyd. Yeah, and guess what? He plays a scientist. He's basically Doc Brown in the desert. His name is Cletus Poffenberger, and it turns out he's lived in the hills just outside of Perfection for decades, not talking to anyone, but just taking care of his pet, which he's named 412. 412 is a creature he grew in a secret underground government lab using a chemical called Mixmaster, which is able to combine animals' DNA to make a completely different species. Luckily, this doesn't affect humans, or graboids as far as I can tell, so that's good. But 412 is a force to be reckoned with. Cletus was able to contain the beast by feeding it the flowers of certain cactuses. However, it seems like they're all gone, so everyone's in trouble.
Run for it! There's a monster on the loose!
Cletus comes into town for the first time, and he fits right in. Mainly because he's been watching them for the past 30 years from afar with binoculars, which is kind of creepy.
I've admired you from afar, but you really ought to wear some clothes when you're out.
Just for a moment, think about what it must have been like for these actors and crew to work with Christopher Lloyd. They must have been starstruck. And there's a lot of one-on-one time with Cletus and Burt. They knew who their main actors were in this one. And it's great. Anyway, 412's loose and killing animals. It's only a matter of time before he starts to hunt down humans. While out looking for him, Cletus shows Burt the road to the underground lab, which has since been abandoned. But Burt doesn't believe him. He's scoured every inch of this desert. If there was a lab, especially a government one, he would know about it. Well, maybe not. Later on, 412 kills a couple rando tourists, and I can't help but notice he sounds exactly like a velociraptor from Jurassic Park. The Perfectionites fight 412 for a bit, but then, as luck would have it, El Blanco swings by and takes out 412. But don't relax just yet. There's still 10 minutes left in this episode. 412 secretes a smell like a skunk that makes El Blanco spit him out. The graboid isn't a threat to this guy. The only thing our heroes can do is hide out in Tyler's Quonset hut and search around for something they could use. They end up making a flamethrower, and after Cletus pleads with 412 to stop, he fails, and the guys have to use their homemade flamethrower and eventually kill Cletus's best friend. They take him back to his home, and Burt wanders around looking for the long-lost lab. Project 412 is an important episode, not only because it has Christopher Lloyd in it, but it also introduces us to the underground lab and Mixmaster, which will be coming back in later episodes. I think episode 6, Ghost Dance, is the only one that I saw during its original run. I only remember bits and pieces of it, but I do remember it not having a graboid in it. Instead, it's a ghost. Well, not really. It's more of a green cloud that at first everyone thinks is a ghost. Rosalita and her assistant, Harlow, hear a scream coming from an old mine and run inside to find a guy half sucked dry. Rosalita goes in a little deeper and sees the ghost with her own eyes. Back in town, Burt's still looking for the underground lab, and it looks like he's onto something. But then they get interrupted when Rosalita and Harlow bring their new friend into town. Rosalita tells Burt about the ghost, and he doesn't believe her. Conspiracy theories, sure, but ghosts? That's where Burt draws the line. So he and Tyler head into the mine to prove her wrong. Burt thinks that the mine is connected to the lab somehow. Inside, they find more bodies and bring them into town for Twitchell, who reports the other guy ended up dying on his way to the hospital. Death by severe dehydration. Everyone refuses to believe that a ghost can suck the water out of you, so Twitch, Burt, and Tyler go back inside. They do find a ventilation shaft that Burt thinks is connected to the underground lab, and I think he might be onto something. They go deeper in and hit a dead end, only to turn around and see the ghost. Tyler throws an apple at it, and it sucks it dry. So Burt splashes some water on the wall, and they squeeze past it, confirming that this thing eats water. Back in town, they get a visit from the guys in the Environmental Protection Agency, here to cover everything up. But when they try to fight the creature, well, they fail miserably. They're gonna need some help, so they call in Cletus. He did work at the lab at one point. Maybe he knows what this thing is. And, as luck would have it, he does. The ghost is actually a hydrophilic bacteria made in the lab to preserve food. The idea being that this bacteria would suck out all the water, thus there'd be no need for refrigeration. Unfortunately, some mixmaster was left in the lab. The canisters leaked, combined with the bacteria, and whammo, giant water-sucking bacteria cloud. And that's just the start of it. If Mixmaster leaked out, who's to say what animals would be affected in the valley? But first we need to worry about that bacteria, and the gang comes up with a plan. They can't kill it with any known chemicals, so they're gonna have to suck it up and contain it. They all jerry-rig up a device that can handle the job, and just like the Ghostbusters, trap the bacteria ghost, and perfection is saved again. For now.
You're looking at a genius, Bird!
In Night of the Shriekers, we learn that the government is trying to train the Shriekers to do their bidding. Big surprise, right? Anytime there's a deadly animal found, we have to try to turn it into a weapon. But maybe that's not the case at all. Burt and the crew meet Dr. Megan Flint, the leader of this little Shrieker experiment. She explains that she's actually training them to use their heat-seeking ability to find people lost in earthquakes and mines. And yeah, these Shriekers can see through rock now. Dr. Flint also tells them that they don't feed them enough to reproduce, and they can't turn into ass blasters. They seem to have all their bases covered, but you just know something's gonna happen. And that night, there's a storm that takes out the electric devices inhibiting the Shriekers. After that, it's all over. Most of the military team's taken out, and it's up to none other than Burt to hunt them all down. But Dr. Flint can't let all of her research go down the drain like that. While Burt, Tyler, and Rosalita are on a shooting spree, she sabotages our heroes, destroying all their ammo. Nancy, Jody, and Twitchell all hide from the bursting ammunition, and they run into the safe room, but they get trapped. They all yell at Dr. Flint, who did what she did with good intentions. She has another device that can control the Shriekers, and it's on its way. Once she gets that, she can take control of one of them, and then the others will follow. Easy peasy. Except when her inhibitor gets there, the Shriekers attack and kill her. So that's the end of that idea. To get their friends out of the safe room, Burt instructs them on how to make a homemade bomb.
Few household chemicals in the proper proportion.
It seems to work, and they get out just in time, too, because the Shriekers are getting into his compound. They fight the monsters hand to hand until they're all dead, and everyone lives to fight another day. But hey, that's just what it takes to live in perfection.